This is Lynn Collier. Thanks for coming to be with us tonight. We are our very special guest star speaker is Darin Marques, and he's going to talk to us about being an entrepreneur in these interesting times. And we're going to record this. It's going to be on Holistic Vegas. Anytime you'd like to be able to see that, you can go there. And then after this, we invite you to stay doing a presentation on our Wellness Savings Travel Club. So let's get started. Darin is a luxury realtor, but he's also an entrepreneur and has had his hands in a lot of businesses, and we'll get with that pretty soon. But you're also a native of Las Vegas, right, Darin?
I call myself a native. My parents moved here when I was 6, so.
Okay. Where did you move?
Elementary, junior high, high school, all of that here.
Where did you move from?
Vancouver, Washington.
Cool. So, and can you tell us how you got started as an entrepreneur?
I would say that came from my dad. So part of the reason we moved here was that my dad owned gas stations in Washington State. And in the early 80s, when interest rates were 18% for mortgages and there was the gas wars, I remember people physically getting in fights in our parking lot over trying to get enough gas. And about that time, the little town that we lived in was a lumber industry, or supported by the lumber industry, and with everything stopping with construction, the market took a hit, and the company that owned the land that he had his gas station on came up for sale. They sold it. We moved to Vegas, but a lot of that came from him. So he's always been my dad was raised in foster care, went into the Marines, fought in Korea at 17 years old, and he's always been was never the type of person that really pushed us in school, which, you know, at the time I look back and I thought, oh man, I wish I would have done better in school. But it was all the other things that he taught us, discipline and hard work and staying focused, and always pushed us towards being entrepreneurs. And he's a very creative guy himself. I mean, he's 86 years old. He still rebuilds golf carts. That's his new hobby. And he's got 4 golf carts under construction that he's rebuilding for people as of right now. So, but I would say it was my dad that pushed me, you know, even at a young age when I was probably 13, 14 years old. My parents didn't have a lot of money. And so he said, hey, if you want to make some money, then go out and wash cars or something. So that's what I did. That was officially my first business. I got a little crate and I had a buffer and all my car wash materials, and I'd go to the neighbors' houses. I made up little flyers and I went to the neighbors' houses and started cleaning all the neighbors' cars. And before I knew it, I was the friend with all the cash. And I was like, oh, I like this.
And you were 14. You were 14 years old.
I was actually 13 at the time when I started doing that.
So then you're also one of the other interesting things is that you were in the natural foods or the health food industry. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's some of where I got my entrepreneurial from. The guy that I worked for was an entrepreneur as well at the time. So starting at 14, I got into weightlifting and met a gentleman in the gym who had just opened up a health food store. And so he said, hey, are you looking for a job? And like, yeah, sure. If you'll hire me when I'm 14 years old. And he did. So I worked part-time, couple hours a day after school, and ended up working for him for 7 years, and helped him start up other businesses while I worked for him. And that's when I really learned a lot more about entrepreneurship. And everybody I kind of worked for along the way was either, I was always attracted by startup companies. I never wanted to go work for a big corporation. That wasn't of interest to me. I liked the startup and the creativity and having the projects and being able to grow something. And so as I went through my career, I always kind of ended up finding my way to things that were entrepreneurial or working for people that were entrepreneurs. And so 10 or 15 of those years I spent in the fitness industry working for different startup companies.
So, and now you're a luxury realtor. We were talking about the real estate.
Yep. And I still know a lot of those. It's actually kind of interesting too. My big clients actually are from the fitness industry. One of them was a gentleman who started the Pure Protein Bar. And he's somebody that still is a mentor of mine today. He started that company with $5,000 and negotiating with banks and going and getting orders and then taking them to the bank and showing them he had orders so he could get money to produce the product. And he sold the company 7 years later for $78 million. So
that's kind of good news. So now here we are in this unprecedented times. It's one of the reasons we wanted you on here, because I know you do a lot of personal development talks for people, realtors and other business people. So I want to talk to you about how entrepreneurs are faring right now, what they can do to keep a positive attitude and keep themselves in business, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I shared with some people a couple weeks ago. I mean, it obviously, this has been a hard time, and emotionally, financially, everything for people. And it doesn't matter who you are, how long you've been working, or how successful you've been. I think anybody can get caught up in this, and I definitely did myself for the first couple of weeks. I definitely let it get the best of me, and part of the reason was that I fell off my normal schedule. I'm a very disciplined person, and that comes from my dad, but I'm very disciplined when it comes to my time. So, I get up every morning at 4:30. I'm at the gym by 5. I have the same routine every day. And so when all of a sudden everything shut down unexpectedly, I was really thrown into a tailspin because I didn't have my normal daily routine. I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't do all the things that I usually do that makes a part of my day. And it really threw me off. And so one of the things that helped get me back focused again was literally just sitting down. And I always share this with my team and several people, but sitting down and putting together my weekly agenda and time blocking things, and then using that discipline to get back on track. So that's what really kind of helped start to pull me back out of this, was just getting back, creating a new routine because things had changed and I couldn't follow my normal routine. So it was just pivoting, finding a new routine, and then remaining disciplined to that. And it was tough for the first couple of weeks because it was easy to want to fall back into, watching the, news 24 hours a day, or, seeing what's the latest on social media from all the part-time medical experts out there. And so it was easy to get caught up in that. So that's where I had to really get disciplined and get that time blocking back in place, and get back to a normal schedule, or what is my normal schedule.
A lot of negativity out there. And you mentioned the time management. That's always one of the biggest things as an entrepreneur. You have to manage your time.
Yep. And that was the one thing I found, especially when you're an entrepreneur or you're self-employed, no one's telling you to get up at a certain time. You don't have to get up at a certain time. If you want to sleep till 10 o'clock, you can sleep till 10 o'clock. So that's where discipline comes in following that schedule. And for me, time management and time blocking is really, really important. I've got my certain things I do every day. I check my email at a certain time. I make my calls at a certain time. And there's, no one's perfect. And it's funny because every time I share the time blocking with people, they always say, oh yeah, but I can't do that because this might come up or that might come up. And that's true, it might. But I always tell people it's like a workout plan at the gym. If you don't have a plan, you'll go and you'll kind of wander around trying to figure out what you're going to do, versus where if you have a plan, you walk in. And not every day is perfect, but that way you have your plan so that when you fall off the wagon, you can quickly get back on. You know where to start back at. So.
Now you're a physical fitness. I know your wonderful wife, Susan, owns a gym. She's a former professional boxer, but you're not the only entrepreneur I've read about and talked to that really puts that first. And they do it the first thing in the morning, the miracle morning, where they do the meditation, the workout. Why is that important to do as an entrepreneur?
I think for several reasons. So for me, and you're right, because the one thing I can tell you about the 5 a.m. crowd at the gym, it's the same people every morning for 5 years that I've seen at the same gym that I've belonged to for 5 years, religiously. And that's the one thing you'll notice about people in the morning, very disciplined. And things come up in your day. And so for me, my health, myself is the most important thing to take care of in the morning. If I don't take care of that, and I let the stresses and all those other things come in, it's easy and to start to wonder why you're doing what you're doing, number one, because you're not enjoying life. And the other part of it, I also use that time in the morning to multitask. So I do my cardio first thing in the morning when I get there. And while I'm doing cardio, I either read some type of motivational book, business book, something like that. And then I also, or I'll listen to an Audible. So, a book on audio that I can listen to while I'm doing my cardio. And then I go work out. And the nice thing is that, most people wake up to their phone ringing, and then they're kind of under the gun and stressed all day long. And again, going back to my dad, who was a Marine, and we were raised like Marines. You get up early bird catches the worm. And for me, it's an enjoyable part of the morning because I wake up, my phone's not ringing. I get fired up for the day. I've had my caffeine. I've got my workout in. By the time I leave the gym, I'm 110% and ready for the day. So when somebody calls me at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, or I'm calling them, I'm focused. I'm running at all, 110%, and they're still trying to wake up and get their day going. So
One of the things you mentioned is reading, and the old saying, readers are leaders. I've noticed that to be true with the business people I know. They always are reading usually a self-help book or a self-development book, a history book, or something that they can share with you, or an audio book. Do you find that to be true?
yeah, I mean, two things I like reading personally, and just recently I've gotten more into reading is history. But definitely self-help books. The book I'm reading right now is The Magic of Thinking Big. And that's a book that I've read 5 times. Another book that's a favorite of mine is The Power of Focus. I've read that 7 times. And, especially times like this when it's easy to get caught up in negativity and get caught up on all the stresses is really when you need to focus in. And the reading really helps because it's amazing. The one thing that you realize, no matter how old these books are, it's somewhat encouraging when you look back. You can read a book like Think and Grow Rich that's, I don't even know, I think it's 60 or 70 years old, maybe older than that. And a lot of the things they talk about in there are things that are repeating today, but there's a lot of principles and things that still apply to today as well. And it was interesting, I was even reading a book the other day in The Magic of Thinking Big. I don't remember what part it was, but there was a particular item in there that related to just, communication with people. And I thought that was a really important factor, is just remembering that, it's easy to get caught up in the digital day and try to communicate through text and email and Facebook, but it's important to still pick up the phone once in a while and speak to people in person as well.
And talking about communication, I know for you and a lot of my friends kind of took a social media break because they couldn't take it anymore. They couldn't
Yep.
take the craziness anymore. But also I've noticed you and a lot of the people I follow are doing a lot more social media as far as Facebook Lives and that sort of thing to promote their business. Can you tell us how to stay sane while using the social media to help promote your business?
Yep. I limit my time now on social media. So there's about 2 times a day that I'll go on, and I either is when I'll post my stuff versus getting caught up in it. I've deleted the apps off my phone so that I don't find myself, because I think it's habit. It's easy to procrastinate as well. I've found that sometimes when I want to procrastinate or find something to do that keeps me from doing what I should be doing, it's easy to get caught up in social media and spend an hour there. And then, I ran out of time. And so, it wasn't just for the stresses and stuff that it causes, but it was also just that it's time consuming. You can find yourself all of a sudden digging through it for an hour and watching videos and reading articles and all this stuff. And so I had to just go back to really limiting my time with that. Same with TV. I found myself getting caught up in that. So I basically shut my TV off, pulled my cable box out so that it would, really when it comes down to it, it's just using the discipline to keep away from it, and get back to doing what I should be doing, whether it's reading or doing some work or just doing something that's active or going talking to people, something like that. So.
One of the things I want to open this up to Q&A because we have a bunch of entrepreneurs here and some business people here. But what I wanted to talk to you about is what's the one thing with the crisis going on? Everybody got knocked off the apple cart and had to, like you said, focus, regroup, get back on it. And we're still in uncertain times right now. What's the one thing that you could tell business owners and entrepreneurs that they can do to help them, roll with the punches?
So, you knew Florence. I was very fortunate to work for, I would say, the top real estate agent, not only female, but top real estate agent in general. And I always share that. And one of the things just to talk about her is that I always say is that, there's usually men that are mentors for men and women that are mentors for women. But very rarely nowadays, even nowadays, do you see women who are mentors for men. And that was Florence. Everybody wanted to be Florence. And the one thing that still sticks in my mind to this day was one of the best lessons that Florence ever taught me. I was in the middle of probably one of my most stressful deals. It was the largest deal I'd ever done at that point. And I was just starting out. I was only a couple of years in. And financially, I was struggling. I needed this deal so bad, and it was falling apart. And I didn't see any way on how it was going to come back together. And Florence said, Darin, when the waters get rough and you're in the storm, she said, stay focused on the shore, and just continue to stay focused on the end result, and seeing yourself through to completing this deal. And it was like in an instant that changed my mindset, and I did. And so anytime anything would come up, I didn't let it stress me. I just stayed focused on the end result, which was closing the deal. And 30 days later, we closed the deal, and it was my largest transaction to date, or up to that time, which it was very, I learned a lot from that as well. That still today, I mean, literally that was one moment in my life that literally changed the way I live the rest of my life. And still today, and even my wife, now she's an entrepreneur, and this is the first time her owning a business of her own. And it's something that I share with her constantly, because I think any entrepreneur can get caught up in the day to day and start to question sometimes, why am I doing this? Why don't I just go back and get a job? And so it's times like that when I always, Florence rings in my head, and I go back to that. And still to this day, like I said, I think it's probably one of the most important things I've learned.
And Florence Henderson was a great mentor to a lot of realtors, and a lot of, yeah, she had a great European following, and really had a lot of knowledge in the real estate market and business in general. And communication was a big deal, like connecting with people was her finest skill, I think. I didn't know her like you did, but and connecting with people is a big part of business, right?
Yep, definitely. Yeah, I mean, she was a big believer in calling. I mean, every day she was religious. Even as successful as she was, every day you'd see her in the office. She was there making her phone calls, calling her clients, checking in, and communication was a big thing for her.
Great. All right, we're going to open up the channel here and see what we've got in the chat. If there's anybody that has a question for Darin, raise your hand or put it in the chat so we can unmute you. Tim Dunn, who's another realtor with Berkshire Hathaway, says, absolutely, Darin. So not sure about what he's saying absolutely about, but any questions? Darin, Tim, do you have a question?
I think Mike Lean's raising her hand.
Let's see. Oh, Michelin has a question.
Hi, Darin. I'm just wondering, with all the virus going on and everything, was there anything that you've had to incorporate into your schedule or your work life that you might want to keep in the future, even if you thought was maybe beneficial, or maybe even when things go back to normal that you thought was a good thing to do and you're going to keep in your schedule or whatever?
I'm trying to think. I've pretty much gotten back to a normal schedule. I mean, even when everything was still closed down, I started working out from home, and I had the same schedule then. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm completely OCD and germaphobe, and have been all my life. So not much has changed in my world. I constantly wash my hands, and I've always liked to keep a little bit of distance from people. So honestly, not much has changed. And I go back to, I think that's where organization, time management, discipline, all those things come in place, where no matter what happens, you can shift immediately and make changes. And like I said, the only thing that really changed for me that I liked working out from home, which was a little different for me. I've never enjoyed that in the past, and I really started to like that more. It wasn't so much working out from home as that I was outdoors. So I would run around the neighborhood. Part of my workout was doing sprints around the neighborhood, that type of stuff. And I really started to enjoy that. But I will tell you, I missed the human interaction of being at the gym and talking to people, because, going back to fitness, it's one of the things that's constantly helped me in my life. I was extremely shy when I was young. Getting into fitness helped build a lot of confidence for me, but it's also helped me in my career, because the one thing I've always said about fitness and the gym is that everybody is the same when you're in the gym. You can have the guy who's the mechanic working out with the CEO of MGM, and when they're in the gym working out together, they're the same people. And so I've met some incredible people through the gym. In fact, that's how I met Florence and Ivan, was through a friend of mine who wore the same thing to the gym every day. I thought he was a real estate agent at the time. Years later, I found out he was a real estate developer and worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Didn't know that because he never showed that. But it's one of the things I always go back to is fitness, the discipline that I learned from fitness that applies to everything in my life, and just keeping myself healthy. I think was something that I've had to get back to, that I allowed myself to sway from a little bit, was that my eating habits, a lot of those things were not as good as they should be. And with this virus and everything that's going on, it's refocused me on eating better and taking care of myself more, and remaining healthy, because that's really important.
Thank you.
Michelin's from New York. We've got Tim Dunn here. He's a realtor in Las Vegas. He has a question.
Actually, I just wanted to say, hey, Darin.
Hey, Tim.
and you're so spot on. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to meet Florence, though I'm well aware of her legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so on point. In the middle of the storm, in the middle of the sea, stay focused on the shore. Yep. Your time management, scheduling, regardless of your profession, is so incredibly important. And I'm just like you, get in that gym early, get pumping and get all that energy for the day, which is interesting. I think it helps decompress you and also helps you stay focused. For me personally, at the end of the day, I have no energy, forget it. So end of the day, it's not happening.
Interesting you say that, because one thing I always tell people when they're like, oh, well, I can't work out in the morning because I have a hard time sleeping at night. I'm like, trust me, if you work out in the morning, you will have no problem sleeping at night.
That's so true. Yeah, exactly. And just keeping that positivity no matter what situation you're in. It's really key. It's really key. So I was just piping in to agree with you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good positive. Debbie Hall has a question about the rental market. She's got a real estate question.
Sure.
You want to ask your question, Debbie? We have you unmuted.
You want me to go ahead and answer it then?
Yeah.
There I go. Sorry about that.
Okay.
We were just having trouble unmuting me. No, I was interested in what you think of the rental market. I know several people that are trying to rent. And of course, when this first happened, everybody thought the prices would just plummet. Yep. And they're discovering that no, they haven't. Rents are remaining high. Do you have an opinion?
Yeah, and I think we're going to continue to see that for a while, because we still got a flood of people coming in. Believe it or not, there's not enough inventory. So, I was just sat on a call with Nevada State Bank 2 weeks ago with their economist. They lean on for where the market is going. And he said, the biggest challenge that we're still having is that there's not enough inventory. And we'll continue to see that. And I think two things are happening in the rental market is that, one, the people who are concerned about what's going to happen in the market have decided to rent. So there has become a big demand for that. And we've seen that even in the luxury market, is that you're getting people who want to move here. They may not find what they're looking for right away. And so the easy route to go is, hey, let's rent for 6 to 12 months. Make sure that we really like the area. And quite honestly, I suggest that sometimes to clients when they come from out of town. Yes, of course, I would love to sell right away, but I also want them to be happy in the area that they're going to. And so sometimes when a client's coming in and they're not really sure where they want to go, rent in that area for a while and see if you like it. I did that myself a couple of years ago. I moved out to Henderson to see if I'd like it, and I loved it. I ended up, at least in there for a year. Would have stayed if they would have sold me the home, but they wouldn't. So ended up having another opportunity somewhere else. But I see the rental market and the real estate market overall remaining strong for a while, and especially the one thing I think might change a little bit in the rental market as people get going and they feel a little more confident in the market in general is that they will probably move over to purchasing because interest rates are so low. It's a great time for them to make that move, and you can buy up too, right? If your interest rate's 2% lower than what it would have been, you can now afford a little bit bigger home. So,
thank you. Thank you, Debbie, for that question. We have Chris Goodlow. He's our team leader for Experian, and he wants to ask you a question.
Hey, Darin, nice to meet you. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Chris?
Good. I've appreciated our conversation thus far. I do have a question for you. Are you yourself a real estate investor? Are you a broker? What's your capacity? You yourself look for deals and take advantage of opportunities, or are you just representing more of buyers? What's your role in real estate?
Just representing. Yeah, I've never really got into investments and flipping, that type of stuff. Quite honestly, it just doesn't really interest me. I like development, like large projects. Askaya, that's why I loved Askaya, because it was a project that was there, and there was I was building it to something. But no, as far as real estate investments, just like the stock market, it's never really been anything that interests me. I like selling because it's the competition, and then there's a start date and an end date to accomplish that goal. So.
For everyone on the call, Darin was open to Skya, which is a luxury home community in Henderson. Custom homes, they buy the land and build the custom homes, and that's what Skya is.
Awesome. I appreciate it. And Darin, I guess my second question would be, do you believe then, if that's the case, if you're not investing in real estate, you're selling property very successfully, do you believe in multiple streams of income yourself?
Yes, I do.
And do you advise that for other people?
That's part of being an entrepreneur, right? I mean, I have 2 other companies that I'm either partners in or that I own that are in different industries. So I'm partners in an air conditioning company. I'm a big believer. I think long-term, and that is the one area that I do invest. I invest in other businesses because being an entrepreneur, it's what I love to be a part of. I'm a huge believer in the service industry, meaning service businesses, carpet cleaning, air conditioning, because those are things that long-term, even real estate at some point as an agent will be impacted by the Zillows and the Redfins of the world. Just like in the health food industry, part of the reason I moved out of that 10 years ago was because it was greatly getting impacted by Amazon. In Vegas, for example, there was 85 health food stores back in the early 2000s. Now there's maybe 30 in a city it's twice as large as it was then, mostly because it was so heavily impacted by online. And that's the one thing for me, I service businesses like air conditioning, plumbers, all those type of businesses. It's going to be really hard in a very long time before the human is replaced in that type of business.
I agree. Appreciate that insight. Yeah, very, very good. Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Darin, I want to thank you so much for being our guest speaker tonight. I appreciate
it.
Yeah, appreciate you being here.